Right, so this is your homework. This is question 1, and it's about a line. They give you the gradient and they give you a coordinate on the line, and they're just asking you to get the actual equation of the line. Okay, so what we've got, remember you've got your wee equation, y equals mx plus c, and what we can do is just substitute these values in. So what you've got, and that allows you, we're going to work out what c is. So what we've got is obviously this point is just x and y. Okay, so what we can say is we can say minus 25 equals, so we have got minus 5, because remember the gradient is m, right? So that is minus 5. And we're going to times that by 4, and then we go plus c. So we say minus 25, and that is equal to minus 5 times 4 is minus 20, and that's plus c. So what we can then say is c minus your 20 equals 25, or minus 25. So if we actually add 20 onto this side, to get rid of this minus 20, we have to do the same to the other side. So that's going to mean that c is actually equal to minus 5. So minus 25 is the same as minus 20 plus c, and if c is minus 5, that's minus 20 minus 5. So what we can then do, just to actually finish this question off, we then just write it y equals, we've got the gradient of minus 5, and then we've got x, and then we've got minus 5, and that's the value of c. Okay, so that's essentially where we're at here. My wee line that I drew is actually a nonsense in the first place, because if you see it's a minus gradient, so it's going to be going down this way. Okay, so that's nonsense in the first place, but that's hopefully helped you out. To just remember, equation of a line, you've then got everything that you need to work out what c is, so I've just substituted these values in as x and y. You've got the gradient as well, you then just multiply it out, you then work it out for c, and then just put these values in of gradient and c. So remember, c is where it intercepts the y-axis. Right, so that's question 1. Now if I have a wee look at question 2, right, so question 2, you get this layer. Right, so question 2, we've got 8m plus 2 is greater than 3m plus 17. Okay, that's a wee m there. So what we need to do is actually work out the equation, or solve, sorry, the inequation, right? So we just solve it the same way as an equation. We want to, I'm going to subtract 3m from this side, because we're going to have all the m's over on this side, right? So I'm going to take 3m from here. So what we've now got is that is going to take you to 5m plus 2 is greater than 17. What we're then going to say is, well, we'll take away 2 from this side and take away 2 from this side, and that gives us then 5m is greater than 15. We're then going to divide this side by 5, because we want it just to be m, so divide this side by 5, and that gives you 5, or sorry, m is greater than 3. And that's your answer. So you just solve it the same way as an equation, but remember, keep in mind the sign. Okay, so have the letter on the left hand side, have the numbers on the right hand side, and you'll be fine. Chances are it'll be a nice whole number that you'll get. Okay, but that's question 2. Have a wee look at question 3. What we've got is we've got Tara, she's basically spending £13.54 on 11 litres of petrol, and 3 litres of oil. Pretty cheap that, right? So they're just essentially wanting you to work out how you would write this in an equation. Okay, so we're going to say petrol is going to be represented by P, and we'll say this O is representing oil. So all you do here is we say 11 petrol plus 3 of oil, okay, and that equals, we'll just have it in pence, 1,354 pence. Now, again, that looks like a 0, okay, so you could think of calling it something like x if you wanted, right? But we've got, this is just the 11, we don't know how much, so P really represents the cost of the petrol, and O represents the cost of a litre of oil, okay? But that's your equation, so 11p plus 3o equals that. If you called it x, it would be plus 3x. So this is something that you do if you're creating simultaneous equations as well, right? But that's your answer to that question. Okay, and speaking of simultaneous equations, your next wee question, which is question 4, right? So question 4 is 3x plus 4y equals 22, and then we've got 8x minus 2y. Right, equals 8. So first thing you do is we number them. Now we're wanting to, I'm going to get rid of y's, okay, so we're going to eliminate y's. So I want the coefficient in both of these equations to be the same. So it's 4y here, it's 2y. If we actually multiply this, times that by 2, we end up getting a third equation, and that third equation is actually going to be 2 times 8 is 16x minus 4y equals 16. So we're going to use this equation and we're going to use this one. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to take equation 1 and add equation 3 to it. Because if you add this plus 4 minus 4 gives us no 4's, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to add this equation to this equation. So what we've got is, if we add these together, so that's 3x plus 16x, so that will give us 19x plus 4 minus 4 is 0, and that is going to be 38. So 19x equals 38, x is going to equal 2, right? Divide that side by 19 and divide that side by 19. What we're then going to work out is we need to work out what y is, okay? So I'm going to take equation 1, so equation 1 was 3x plus 4y equals 22. So what I'm going to just say is, well, we know that x was equal to 2, so 3 times 2 plus 4y equals 22, so 6 plus 4y, I'll scroll down a wee bit, that equals 22. I'm going to subtract 6 from that side, subtract 6 from that side. So we get 4y equals, it's minus there, that's 16, so y equals 4. And that's what x is, so, sorry, that's what y is. So once you work out what x, you then basically take that value, substitute it back into one of the equations. So if I ended up substituting it back into here, and then you can work out what y is, okay? So if we then look at question 6, I'll scroll up a wee bit. Right, so question 6, you've got a equals 5, the square root of x, and b. Now you need to remember these things, right? If you're multiplying numbers together, the opposite of that is divide, the opposite of dividing is multiplying, right? So you always do the opposite operations. Plus, to undo a plus, you do a subtract, to undo a subtract, do a plus. Square root, the opposite of that is squaring it, and the opposite of squaring it is take the square root. If you know these, you'll be fine with changing the subject to a formula, right? We want this to be, a subject is going to be what x is, right? So we don't, right? So what I would suggest is rewrite it so x is in the left hand side. So we're going to say 5x over b equals a. So that's the first thing, right? It reads a wee bit easier. We're going to then times this by b, right? So times both sides by b. So we've got 5 square root of x equals ab. We're then going to, x has been times by 5, so we're then going to divide this. Okay, so again, you're just doing opposite operations. So we end up with the square root of x equals ab divided by 5. And last but not least, it's the square root of x, so we need to just square it both sides. So you end up with x equal, I'm just going to say AB over 5 and have that squared. Okay, so you just remember, just do the opposite operations to actually undo what's currently been done to it. And that was question 5. Right, we've got a parabola, and that is the generic equation. See, these questions, the parabola always just has a turning point, a 0, 0. With this one, you've actually, you'll notice is there's actually a coordinate 2, 12. And they're just wanting you to find out what key is, right? So we don't have a clue what key is. So all you do here is you basically substitute. It's just like one of the previous questions. So that's your x and y. So that's x and that's y, right? So what we do is we say, well, y is 12, so we can say 12 equals whatever k is, times 2 squared, because that's what x is. Okay, so these values just, that goes into there, and that value goes into that part of the equation. So what you end up with is you end up with 12 equals, obviously 2 squares 4, 4k, therefore k equals 3. Right, so 3 times 4 is your 12. You can write it to say then y is equal to 3x squared, right? Because we now know the value, and I can go back into that. Right, but that's your answer. Okay, and that's question 6. Now this one's a wee bit trickier. No, in fact, it's not at all actually. Right, so next wee question is question 7. So if I just go to question 7, and then I've got another parabola. Getting worse. It's got a wee turning point that you need to be able to read off the graph, and that turning point is 2 minus 4. You've got a wee generic equation. Okay, this is the complete the square equation. And what you need to remember is these values. That's that. And that's that. Okay. Only difference is that is the opposite of what the actual x coordinate is. So if you think about, that's your x, that's your y, but you could also say that's your b, that's your c, but you always flip this sign round, and what I mean by that is if we were to write this, we go y equals x. Now it's a positive 2, but you have to just do the opposite, so it's minus 2. That's a minus 4, but we keep the sign. So that, we keep the sign, that one you always have to change it round. Okay, but that's essentially how you do that. Imagine you had another one in which it was, say it was minus 3 minus 4. You'd say, well, y equals x. You do the opposite, so it's plus 3 squared, and then that's, you still keep the same sign for the y coordinate. But that's your answer there. Right, so what we have is we can say b goes here minus 2, and c equals minus 4. Next wee question is, okay, so next question is y equals x minus 3, x plus 3. So essentially the first thing you want to do is you're going to end up drawing this, so you end up finding where it cuts the roots is where it cuts the x-axis. So if I try and draw this very roughly, so the roots are where it's actually going to be cutting this axis here. Okay, so that's the x-axis. So what you have to think of is, well, where it cuts the x-axis is when y equals 0. So what you've got here is we can rewrite this equation to say y0, x minus 3, x plus 3. So remember, it's an equation, so we need to get this side to be 0. There's two ways of getting this side to be 0. The first way is making this part of the equation 0. So what can x be? So if you subtract 3 from it, it's going to be 0. So if we actually say x equal 3, so 3 subtract 3 is 0, so that will be that taken care of. And what can you add to x that will make it 0? Well, we can say x equals minus 5. So essentially x just takes the value, but it's always opposite sign, right? So that's actually 2 of the roots. So you've got one root is cutting that there at 3 and the other's cutting at minus 5. What we then want to work out is we want to work out basically the y-intercept, and that's essentially when it's going to be cutting the y-axis, and that's always when x is 0. Okay, so what we say is y equals x minus 3, x plus 5. That is when x equals 0. So what we do is y equals, we'll just say 0 minus 3 and 0 plus 5. And that means y equals minus 15. Right, so it's actually, I'll just need to drag this down a wee bit. Right, so it's actually going to cut down there about minus 15. Right, yeah, last wee bit is, so we've got that done, you've got the intercept there, so we actually need to work at the turning point. So the turning point, okay, of the x coordinate is you actually just add the roots together and divide by 2. So that's essentially root 1 plus root 2 divide by 2. So that equals minus 5 plus 3 divide by 2. So remember, minus 5 plus 3 is minus 2 divide by 2, and that gives you minus 1. Right, so that's essentially where your axis of symmetry is. So you're going to end up having a parabola in which it's symmetrical, remember, right down there. So we now need to work out what the turning point y coordinate is, and that's just when you put this back into that equation. So if we do y equals x minus 3, x plus 5, what we can then do is y equals, we'll just say that's minus 1 minus 3 minus 1 plus 5, and then we just say y equals minus 4 times 4, so the y coordinate is going to be minus 16. Okay, so it's your turning point's essentially minus 1 and then minus 16. So remember, once you work it out for for x, you just put it back into that equation. Okay, so you're substituting it there for your x. I'll probably stop this video so it can actually upload. Right, so hopefully that's helped you, and that took you up to actually question 7. Obviously, before I finish, I need to actually draw it. And that is probably the worst I've ever drawn. But you can see where it crosses the axis, where the turning point is, and where the roots are. So obviously you take a wee bit more time doing that, okay? And you have the coordinates there as well, right? But that is that question.